name is Lauren Jenkins, and I wanted to be a part of Letters to My Mama because I feel like this episode, the trauma episode, is really, really important for young girls who are in situations where they may not can see the light. And I'm here to tell you that troubles don't last always, okay? Listen, when I was young, like really young, so I could say when I first moved to Baltimore, and I was 13 when I moved here, and I was just from Florida. I was bubbly, you know, believed everybody was great. They were friendly down in Florida, but when I came to Baltimore, everybody was a little rougher. Like, why are you looking at me trying ready to fight? So I say all that to say is, like, during my journey here and starting to get into guys, I had my first like real experience with sex when I was 15. But I didn't want it. So the guy was older. He was like 26. I'm 15. He's like, if I do this, let me just do this to you, oral sex. And I'm like, I don't really want to. But he was so aggressive, and he just was like, let me do it and I'll stop. And so I was like, okay, I just wanted it to be over. You know, I wanted him to leave me alone. I thought if I did it this one time that he will go away. And it didn't happen. Like, he would be around my neighborhood and he would see me, and then things progressed to it was like, okay, well, again, let me just put it in and I'll stop. And I'm like, no. So this time it was a struggle, and as I got older, I didn't realize in that moment where I just laid down and gave up, that as an adult and through my cycle and my like dating, just decision making, when things get tough, I just gave up. And it was so crazy because he didn't actually, you know, penetrate me, but it was a lot of, I had to fight my way off of him. And I just like yeah, it was I didn't realize, that's what I was trying to say, I didn't realize it was actually considered rape until I was literally 26 years old. I went to therapy and I was talking to my therapist, and I was like, yeah, I really don't know what it was. You know, he didn't penetrate me, so it was fine. She was like, no, you were raped. And I was like, really? And she was like, that's what rape is. You said no, and he continued. And I was like, oh, help me as a grown woman realize how I made decisions with dating and always trying to please somebody, or if they wanted things a certain way, and even if I wasn't comfortable, I just said okay, thinking that they would like me or things would change. And I wasted a lot of my life trying to please or be accepted, especially by men thinking that they only wanted me for my body. And I went from that to really getting into boyfriends to my first real love abused me. I had to get stitches. I still have like a teeny scar right here where he actually punched me because I got mad because he took my car for hours and I was trying to get to work. So when I confronted him, like, and I really didn't even say anything, I had an attitude, and I just got that, was it right hook across my face, blood was everywhere, I had to get stitches, and I'm sitting here like, but the crazy part is that wasn't the first time he hit me, and because it wasn't blood, I was like, you know, it's okay, he's not gonna break me, I fight back, I speak up for myself.
Healing from trauma, as we all know, can take a lifetime. Sometimes it never happens. The trauma that I've dealt with, that I have healed from, unfortunately, one of the most major trauma I experienced in my life was at the hand of my own father. It was molestation, and I unfortunately had to heal from that without ever hearing, and I'm sorry. I think I was able to do that only because drugs were involved. I was young, right? So I made excuses for him because prior to this moment, he was my Superman. I'm the youngest out of 5. You could tell me nothing about my daddy. But once this occurred, I had to find rationale somehow. And And I do not believe in making excuses for people, but I was so young at the time. This was done innately. And as I got older and started really processing what happened, I distanced myself from him greatly. But I was still able to be in his company at family functions, although everyone knew what had happened. And I know it was a little weird for some people, like, how can that happen? And the answer to that was that I healed on my own. I felt like the man that I knew as a father would have never done that to me once the drugs take over. I was born in the 80s. All we knew was, this is your brain on drugs, this is your brain, you know. So I factored that in, and I identified with the fact that this does do something to people. As I got older and realized that I was not going to receive this apology, because I had a conversation with him where he did not really find fault. And at that point in time, he was very much so clean. Then I could deal with the fact that, oh, this was really you. This was really you that you purposefully did this to me. And then I had to take it a step further and say to myself, that was his time to apologize. He did not. He dug in deeper. You cannot expect a person of that type of mind frame to help you. You have to help yourself. I am a firm believer in not making excuses for myself. I am a firm believer in just getting it done. So I then had to take some time and really do the brain work on my own. And slowly but surely, with self-care and understanding that not only ain't I the only one, but I'm still living, right? So I still have a chance to get it and do it and be better as a person. But I've seen people fall from this, and that's not a place that I wanted to live in. I didn't want to be in that dark place, so I knew I had to keep pushing. I had to keep pushing. And when I tell you, there is nothing but God, nothing but God that allowed me to push that way. He carries me still to this day, because I still deal with it a bit from time to time when I see him. But I do know at the end of the day, there's nothing he can do to help me. My father cannot do anything to help me. So I can't look to him for that. I had to do the work within myself.
I was gracefully asked to be on season 3 to talk about trauma and my experience with trauma, dealing with it, healing from it, and just moving on. So I decided to talk about what a lot of people, most of you all who see this video will probably not know this about me, because I am very private, but hey, I'm here to share. So I'm going to talk about a time in my life when I was in an abusive relationship, right? Yep, me. In an abusive relationship. And I really don't know how I arrived there. I just was in, of course, no abusive relationship, I think, start off physically abusive. I think there's elements that lead to it, and it progresses on until it gets physical. But in retrospect, looking back, there were signs. Yeah. So, for me, when it was first just controlling, like it was just like a shift in energy. It was more of me needing to be accountable to this person, and it progressed, and it went from that to like the typical where you going and call me every 5 minutes, literally. No, literally every 5 minutes. And then it just progressed, and then it just got verbal, and then it was just a character breakdown of back and forth arguing. And I grew up in like a semi-toxic, maybe not semi, but a toxic dynamic with my parents just being confrontational, combative, and dysfunctional at times. So I really never wanted to have that same narrative and have that same dynamic, but you find yourselves being attracted to the things that we don't think that we will become attracted to, right? It's like a nurture thing.
So when I think about trauma and my journey from healing from the trauma, it's a process. It is a process, a daily process. Some of life's hardest things to get over is death. Death of a loved one, death of a friend. And honestly, grief isn't just in losing someone. Grief can be your whole life changing, including the pandemic, how none of us have ever imagined a life that we're in right now. I know a lot of people who lost careers that they've enjoyed, that was their passion, and they don't know what to do. And we're all in a journey to get to a normal, a new normal. And for me right now in my life, already dealing with the death of my mother, constantly, because that is something, as I spoke before, that never goes away. It gets easier as the time goes by, but there are times in my life where it's just really hard. As I spoke of a little earlier, my son was recently diagnosed with autism, and as I said, like, there are days I wish I could really call her.
Let me talk to you a little bit about grief and how that feels. It's bad, especially, again, I go back to my son. I have to use my son. I buried my mother. My father died when I was 4. My sisters, both of them, and both of my brothers. And I'm the only one left in the immediate family. So I've suffered some loss. I've suffered traumatic losses. My mother was my best friend, and I was only 30 when she died. And, you need your mother. you need to have your mom around. And I was 30 years old, and I was actually pregnant with Ian when she passed away. So 3 months after she died, then I gave birth to Ian. And she had taken care of me during my illness, because I get very, very sick when I'm pregnant. So my mom had come over to my house, taking care of my helped me get through, helped me to take care of my other kids, 3 other children, and with my husband, but you know how moms are. My mom had taken care of me. Anyway, she had a heart attack, and she was in the hospital for that October. She was in the hospital for a couple months because she ended up having a couple of strokes, and they had to do open heart surgery, which I had to make this decision about, because my older sisters did not want to make that decision, so they left that on me. And so I felt a little guilt from that trauma too, because I said, yes, go ahead with the surgery. But she was recovering, but she ended up having a couple of strokes. Lost my mother, buried her in December. 3 months later, I gave birth to Ian. And he never got to meet her. And then went through his life, and then when he was 25, he passed away. He died from an overdose. So that's a lot of trauma in my life, and I recognize that as trauma. I already suffer with a bit of anxiety and maybe a little bit depression too. So I knew I had to put some work in through this one, because losing your child, I still feel shocked that he's gone. I still, when I look at pictures of him, and even when I just think about him, I can't believe that he's not here. So I'm still going through the phases of trauma. There's, anger, there's bitterness, there's guilt. What could I have done? Why didn't I see this? Why didn't I see that? In retrospect, we're all blaming ourselves. My sons are saying I should have done this and I should have done that. We're all blaming ourselves. So you just go through that. So it's grief. Grief is a stronghold.
So, trauma. Ooh, big word. Honestly, if I would be totally 100% organic in my response, I would say that I've experienced multiple traumas in my life. I know I spoke a little bit about a heartbreak, in season 2. And then also I just talked about my experience with my mom, who had a substance use disorder. As you notice, I said that I was raised by my aunt and my uncle. I did not say I was raised by my dad. So I would say that was also a traumatizing experience. My dad also had a substance use disorder, but unfortunately he was never a part of my life. I do remember a traumatizing event. I was already living with my aunt and my uncle, and I was having a visit with my mother. My aunt was there. She was pregnant with my youngest cousin, who I do consider my little sister. And my father came, and he tried to take me from my mom and my aunt. My grandfather wasn't there. My grandmother had already passed away, and my uncle, who had a substance use disorder as well, was upstairs. He was literally physically trying to attack my mother and my aunt, and I was there. I was 5. They were telling him no, that he couldn't see me. He was making excuses, saying that he wanted to show me to his mom, who allegedly was across the street, but they didn't see anybody across the street. They told me to go upstairs and get my uncle. I went upstairs. He told me to get the F away from his door. So as you can imagine, being a child, just being so scared that somebody's going to take you that you don't know, but deep down inside having that desire to want to know who he is, because you see other children with a father, you see other children who live with their mother and their father. So he did not take me. I guess he gave up and left well enough alone. Don't know why. Maybe just through the grace of God, my life could have been totally different if he had. But I just remember that moment and thinking of, just as an adult, I remember moments like that and thinking about things that's happened in my life and how it shaped me today, of, having, not allowed those moments to defeat me, but allowing those moments to be real to me and saying, yes, you've experienced hurtful things, you've experienced challenging things, you've experienced trauma. Even with losing my brother when I think I was 31, so he passed in 2017, and essentially my brother being like one of the closest men in my life, because didn't have my father there.
So broken and so far gone, thinking that I had to defend myself because I didn't break. He wouldn't break me. And I was just so mentally gone that when I saw the blood, it was like, wow, I'm really in an abusive relationship. Like, it took me that long. I had been body slammed and kicked and literally punched, but because I didn't see any physical, I could feel the pain, but I didn't see it. And I was just so broken at that time, but I just thought I was being strong because I was fighting back. And that wasn't my last time. I went back after that, still thinking that I could heal him or help him, or if I changed, that things would get better. And I just loved him, and I prayed for him, and I prayed for him, and God's going to change him. And it's like, girl, no, it wasn't. I really don't. I think after time of trying to please him, I just stopped loving him. I started loving me more. But I really didn't do my work at that time, because I transitioned from him to saying, you know what, you've taken me through so much. Now it's cheating and it's this and it's that. I'm done with you. And I didn't give myself time to heal, and I went to my son's father. And it literally was like one relationship to the next. I didn't even, I broke up with him, and my son's father was in my face at the same time. And I was like, okay, well, you're nice. I know you from high school. We laugh, just thinking I'm going to have a good time and not really rushing into something. I wound up pregnant maybe a month in, and didn't know it. And that's when we got into our first fight. He always felt like I was better than him, because when he met me, I was going to school. I was working 2 jobs. And I never understood that, because I'm like, I'm with you. And our first fight was basically that. And I was pregnant and didn't know it. I was slammed to the ground, beat again. And weeks later, I found out I had a child. And I'm like, I can't continue on to be in these toxic relationships. I stayed trying to make it work for my child. But that's when I really silenced myself, because I didn't want to fight anymore. And it didn't work. I was choked while I was like 6 months pregnant. And we got into our fight. I was about 7 months. I was wanted to plan my baby shower. And I don't know where it came from. He was mad because of locations that I was talking about. My family not going to come out there and this. And I'm like, I'm just looking at ideas. Nobody's helping me. You're not even helping me. And I'm driving to work in my car, and boom. out of nowhere, crossed my face. This is the first time I had been knocked out unconscious, okay? I was driving. My car was in full mode, like we were driving. And I just remember like waking up in twilight. And I hear horns and stuff. We didn't hit anything because he pulled the emergency brake up from stopping us to crashing. And I woke up, my mouth was swollen, and I just was like, wow. I think that was the day that I had enough. I was just trying to be cordial so he could be in my son's life. But then once he was born, I tried to bring him around. We got into another fight, and I wound up getting arrested. He pressed charges on me because he didn't want me to press charges on him. So it was a whole tit for tat type of thing. And it's like, I didn't do anything to you. He wound up dropping the charges, and he called me and said, I just want you to know how it feels to be locked up. And I'm like, I literally had a C-section. I'm still breastfeeding my baby. I still had stitches. I wasn't even healed all the way up. And he had me arrested. No, Bryson was almost 2 months, so I still wasn't healed completely.
I did try to talk to someone during this process. Of course, I ran from my mother. This is what happened, right? I ran away from his home, and I ran, and this is what happened. I was met with disbelief at that point because she, like myself, had only knew one type of man from him and had only known him to love me. So she had a hard time processing that herself. Again, that put me in a place of isolation. I have to figure this out on my own. I don't have any pillars here, so I have to figure it out. I always recommend telling. Whether they're going to believe you, whether they're not, you still tell. You could save the next child, and getting it out vocally helps you. So that's definitely something that you should do. Do not hold that in. It is never, ever, ever the victim's fault. To be extremely transparent, in the conversation that I later had with my dad, he said to me, well, you know, when I used to come home in the middle of the night, you would be in the bed with nightgowns on. Those were Cinderella nightgowns. Those were Scooby-Doo nightgowns. That's what children wear, right? So he tried to force it on me and make me take the blame for that. I was not having that.
As I stated on previously on season 2, for me, a part of my journey in healing is my faith in God. As I said, like, I speak to him as if he's in the same room with me. Not just a prayer, but as I'm talking to him. And he can't answer, of course, but he will send people, my friends, my family, to talk to me, like right then and there, when I need him the most, when I need them the most, because there are sometimes I just don't know what to do. And with my faith, I have also discovered meditation, which is a major part of my daily process of healing, because life in general is tough. So meditating every day, once a day, twice a day, journaling is a great part of how you can get out your feelings. And of course therapy. As I said in on previous 2, I was in trying to find a therapist, which I have recently found probably back in December, and I speak to her once a week, and we can just talk about everything, anything that I'm feeling in that moment, how my past week went, my thoughts at that time, and she helps me see a lot clearer with a lot of things. And it helps that to get someone that you're related to. For me and my therapist, she is a believer in God. She's a believer in all religions, as I am. So I can talk to her, and she fully understands how I feel and my thought process. And she helps guide me in whatever issue that I may be having or thoughts that I may be having. Can we start?
I'm gonna edit out anything.
Okay, good. Thank you.
So just speak about a specific trauma, and then your journey from there to here.
Okay. So specifically speaking, the trauma that started not just my life but my entire family's is I didn't really speak much on it previously in season 2, but what has changed my entire family lineage from starting with my grandmother until now was my grandmother's passing.
So I never was like argumentative really. Some people beg to differ, and that's fine. Hey, I was born under the sign of love and justice, so you can't like, yeah, I'm coming, but I never really resonated with the arguing and the back and forth and just the confrontation. You know, like I want peace and balance and just a holistic relationship, and it was just hard to find it in that dynamic. So yeah, and it was hard, and then there was some elements that happened as to why I stayed, you know, with the person. The person had fell ill, and it would have been terrible of me to leave a person, and at that moment what I thought was like you know, just could be, you know what I mean, just very, 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 very ill. Had some terminal diagnosis, and I just stayed, and you know, for whatever reasons, like people project their hurt up on you, and it had gotten really toxic, and it had gotten physical, but then like it didn't take me too long to realize that I deserve better than that, right? It didn't take me to like get my head beat in for me to know that that wasn't for me. It didn't take like for me to be in something long term in years and over for me to realize like, hey, this isn't for me. So yeah, I left that situation, and like moving on from that situation, I knew the things that I did want and I didn't want, and it helped me to fall into the woman I am today, and choosing myself, right, and stopping and learning how to love me, right, because that was something that I could say that at that time I may have lacked, right, the ability to really know how to fully like unconditionally like put myself first and love myself. So,
and it can grip you and actually pull you down and right into the ground. So you have to fight it. You have to fight it. So I'm a Christian, so immediately when I heard that I lost my son, when I got to the house, I just went into worshiping God, because I knew that I needed the Lord to sustain me through the pain that I was feeling. If not, you know, who knows where I would be if I didn't have the Lord. You know, if I didn't know about God and I didn't know about His goodness and His promises to, you know, blessed are those who mourn because they shall be comforted. And it's so true. The word is so true. So I went to God. That's what I did. I went to God. I prayed about it. You know, every day I had to wake up and immediately start praying, because if I didn't, and if I let myself get into that hole, I would be sitting in the corner right now, maybe as Shepherd Pratt or who knows where. I love hard. So my kids, all of them know right now that I would die for them. They all know that. I tell them stuff like that. You know, I might be weird, but I just feel it's important for your children to know how you feel about them. You know, I don't want my kids to say, well, I think she loved me because she did this, that. No, I know my mother loved me. And that's what I've told them. So I do love hard, and so it hit me hard when he passed away. So, you know, every morning, this is what I do. This is what I've done. So every morning, I drop to my knees and pray. I pray to God to help me through my day, help me to get through this grief every morning, every day, because it's a challenge. You can see a picture, because at first I couldn't even look at pictures of Ian. These are phases and stages that I've gone through. I didn't want to talk to people. I didn't want people in my house, did a lot of things, you know, you go through. So there's grief, you know, like I said, there's the bitterness, there's the anger, there's the blaming, there's the shame, there's just all sorts of different phases right now. And I get emails from grief share groups, and I'm on email number 82, and they send them every day. So I have to read those emails, those grief share emails every day. That helps me to understand that what I'm feeling is normal. You know, I didn't know it was normal.
But I just had a cesarean, and I'm sitting in a jail cell with my baby at home with my mom. because this guy decided he didn't want to keep his hands off of me, but he didn't want to go to jail, so he pressed charges on me because he thought I was pressing charges on him. And that's when I had to sit with myself, and it took me a whole year, maybe 2 years. I didn't think I was beautiful. I doubted love from everyone, even my mom, my best friend. I didn't call anybody. The only person I knew who loved me was this baby. And that's the only thing that I didn't have to ever question. I questioned God at one point, but I kept going to church, right? So it's like I would go to church, I would sit there and the preacher be talking about love, and I'm like, girl, what you talking about? I would just beat this, and the third, going back and forth with everything that the pastor was saying, holding this baby broken, but I kept coming, you know, every Sunday. And then I finally started to see things changing. I could smile again. I remember going to my first prayer meeting, and they were, introduce yourself, and I said, we was at the Panera Bread on Security Boulevard in Baltimore, if you are from Baltimore, and it was 3 other women, and Miss Tawanda had said, come and introduce yourself. And I said, my name is Lauren, and I had my son with me, and I said, I'm so broken. I said, I'm down here, I'm lower than the pavement on the sidewalk. And I bawled. Why'd you come here? That was my reason to come into church, because I can't do it. And if he can't do it for me, I won't be here much longer. I was suicidal with this child, and I didn't know. I just didn't know. I felt like it was no way out. And that day I said, I'm an empty vessel at this point, and if he can't do it and fill me up, nobody can. But I kept coming to church, and I just kept praying, and I would pray over my baby, and I would, it was rough. And I can say now, I was like 20, 22, 23 at the time. I'm now 32, about to be 33 in June, and I met the love of my life. And this man treats me like a queen. I'm still not used to it, opening doors. I can't lift stuff heavy. He pays for stuff, and I'm like, what? I'm used to people driving my car, talking down to me. He's never called me out of my name. He's never even raised his voice at me. And we know to communicate, or if we're getting frustrated, let's just have our separate corners. Let's revisit. Let's talk about it, type of thing. But I'm here to tell you that, listen, love doesn't have to hurt. You don't have to stay somewhere because you think that you prayed for it and you asked for God for this person, and then it turns out to not be who you envisioned, but you're trying to make it work. First of all, you don't have to make nothing work. If you're not happy, if you're not whole, if you're not you, and you have to find out who you are before you get in a relationship. And let me tell you, this love of my life ain't come overnight. We met 5 years ago. We weren't ready. Wound up being friends. Would talk here and there. We had to this is not gonna work. He got baggage, I got baggage. But God had to separate us. He had to work on him, I had to work on me, and then we came back, and he like, I'm ready this time. And I'm like, okay. Because I said, God, I'm gonna do my work. I want the person who I'm supposed to be with to do my work, and we gonna heal separately and then come together. People think that you can fix somebody when you get in a relationship. Well, I'm gonna get in this relationship, and they're gonna heal all these broken areas in me and love me back to life. And it's like, no, baby, you got to love you back to life. I made that mistake, because when you go in a relationship with that mentality, you have a void that's empty, and somebody who can fill that void, just that one of feeling lonely, but has so many other toxic traits, you're going to latch onto them because you didn't heal yourself enough to love on you enough, so you're not lonely or empty, and they're feeling it, but it's a whole bunch of chaos around you. And that's how I ended up in these abusive relationships, knowing that they weren't good for me because they made me feel wanted or made me feel beautiful, or whatever the need was at that time. I stayed because I was like, oh, well, this got to be love. My father wasn't there. He never wanted to be around me. He doesn't even call me on my birthday. And this person is like calling me and saying that he loves me. My dad never said it, or, you know, I didn't get that as a child. My mom was always working, you know, so she loved me, but she was always gone. Nobody really wanted to be with me. So I stayed in these relationships because a person needed me. And I don't want to be needed in a relationship anymore. I want to be wanted. It's two different things. And once you understand that, I think that your relationships will really blossom and grow. My boyfriend now does not need me for anything. He wants me in his life. And we complement each other, and it's a give and take. So I'm not giving all these withdrawals and he's not depositing me and back and forth. That's what a healthy relationship is, in my opinion. You can't give all of you and then you have nothing to give to yourself or anybody else. It's not fair.
To get a little more in detail about how she passed away, my grandmother was missing for 3 or 4 days, and this was before I was even born. And come to find out, my grandmother was murdered. She was murdered in a horrific way, incredibly, by someone that was in our family. It was my aunt's husband, or estranged husband. She went to the house that they lived in because they were separated to get clothes for my aunt and her grandson, and it is believed to be that he was on drugs. So with that being said, we don't know exactly the full story of why he did what he did, but he did kill her, and it was a very gruesome crime. And unfortunately, when my aunts and my mother went to the house just to pick up clothes, they found my grandmother. And to imagine finding your mother in just such a horrible, horrific way, and imagine the trauma that caused in them. And to speak on that, the importance of healing, because they never healed from it. They never sought help. Not only did it change them, it changed how they raised their children. Forgive me if I get a little emotional.
But having a father figure who was very strict and stern, and in my opinion, very not the nicest person, you know, but my brother was different, you know. He was very similar to my grandfather, but, you know, just losing somebody that important to you at the same time that you're going through, you know, a heartbreak and a major breakup is very traumatizing. You know, I really didn't know how to get through my days, even as a therapist, even as a Christian. It was nothing that I had learned in the Bible. It was nothing that I had learned in textbooks that was going to mold how I was going to be able to deal with it. So, you know, I had to figure it out on my own. I had to figure out, okay, piecing things together. I had a lot of anger towards God at that time. And sometimes when you go through traumatic things, you start to question your faith. You start to question everything that you've learned, whether it's professionally or whether it's spiritual, and you don't really know which way to turn, because the things that is textbook, you know, or the things that are biblical don't necessarily work for you the way that the Bible said it was going to work. You know, I was not saying, though he slayed me, yeah, I still serve him. I was like, why are you doing this? You know, why do I have to always be strong through everything? Why do I always have to go through a pain to get to my purpose? Why can't I have it the easy way? Why is it seemingly people who don't deserve God's blessings, why do they get to be able to like wipe off the trauma or wipe off whatever they're going through and don't really be bruised? And so, you know, I really had to just be alone with myself and just know that things take time. You know, it's not going to be instantaneously, and sometimes because of the pain, it gives you a different perspective. It slows you down a bit. So my trauma has slowed me down a bit. It always forces me to think. It always forces me to utilize what I've already learned. Sometimes I think that we already have the things deep down inside of us to heal ourselves. God has already put his hand on everything in every moment of our life before we were even born.
It was not my fault. And it's not your fault. If this is something that you are experiencing, it is never, I don't care what you do, what you wear, what you've said. I don't care if you did not fight. I don't care if you did not tell before and it happened years ago. It is not your fault, and it is still your story to tell when you feel comfortable to do so. But I beg of you to not hold it in. Part of that healing comes from telling. I love you more.